There's a projection playing right now, and you're inside it. Not symbolically, not as spiritual poetry, actually inside it. And here's what shifts everything. Ancient wisdom keepers understood this truth. Tibetan masters lived from this knowing. The sages of India wove entire cosmologies around this recognition. Millennia before we split atoms or mapped neural networks, they accessed something that contemporary science is only beginning to validate through experimentation. You've explored the techniques. You've committed to the practices. Perhaps you've consumed the teachings, followed the protocols, sat in stillness asking why, with all this investment, existence still feels like something happening around you rather than arising from you. You've accomplished milestones, fulfilled the requirements culture handed you. Yet something persists, this gnawing sense that the essential piece is absent, that you're performing in a narrative someone else authored. Here's the shift. You're not malfunctioning. You're not damaged. And you're absolutely not isolated in this experience. What you're detecting is actual. Because the dimension you're navigating right now, the tangible material dimension, it isn't reality's foundation. It's an emanation, a projected field emerging from something infinitely deeper, infinitely more primary than physical substance. And the ancient lineages, they didn't simply theorize this. They possessed working methodologies for engaging it, for transitioning from passive witness, caught in the projection, to active generator of it. But here's where everything intensifies. What they uncovered wasn't vague spirituality. It was exactitude. It was consciousness engineering that quantum researchers like David Bohm and Carl Pribram would eventually corroborate through equations and empirical testing. Stay present, because by this video's completion, you're going to recognize why you felt constrained, why existence appears to push back against your intentions, and precisely how to transition from recipient to originator. But first, we need to grasp what they meant by projection. Ready to descend deeper? Let me share a moment that restructured everything for my understanding. I was in a research library examining quantum theory, specifically David Bohm's propositions about reality's holographic architecture. And simultaneously, I had an English rendering of the Upanishads positioned beside me. And what emerged from that juxtaposition, it halted me completely. Here's what Bohm, mentored by Einstein himself, a quantum theorist with unquestionable credentials, was articulating. Existence operates through two domains. The implicate domain, an unseen enfolded dimension where all potential exists in superposition. And the explicate domain, the unfolded materialized dimension of apparent objects and perceived separation that we register through sensory apparatus. If this is resonating with something deep in you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring these consciousness principles together. Now here's what arrested my attention. The Upanishads, composed over 25 centuries ago, articulate existence as containing two dimensions. Brahman, the eternal, unchanging, unified consciousness field, and Maya, the dimension of transient phenomena, of seemingly independent forms that are actually projections from that foundational unity. Different terminology, identical framework. Precisely. And this wasn't random convergence, because as I expanded my research, I discovered this identical teaching in Tibetan philosophical systems, in indigenous wisdom from Australian continent to American territories, in Hermetic mysticism, in Taoist cosmology. Here's what remains unspoken. These weren't conflicting paradigms. They were independent confirmations of identical fundamental architecture about existence's structure. But here's the paradox that amplifies this understanding. Contemporary science, with its sophisticated instrumentation and mathematical proofs, required until the 1970s to even approximate what a practitioner meditating in an 11th century Tibetan cave already embodied, what Aboriginal wisdom carriers had been transmitting for 40 millennia, what Hindu philosophers encoded in the Vedas countless generations before the Common Era. They lacked particle accelerators. They lacked neuroimaging technology. What they possessed was something modern culture has predominantly forfeited: unmediated access to the implicate domain through consciousness itself. And here's where this becomes immediately relevant for your experience. These weren't abstract theorists contemplating philosophical concepts. They were active practitioners. They cultivated precise methodologies, contemplative technologies, perception-shifting protocols, awareness techniques that enabled them to interface with existence at the implicate dimension, to actually modify the projection from its generative source. The Tibetan master Milarepa could materialize sustenance and hydration in remote wilderness. Indigenous healers could dissolve disease by working with what they recognized as the interconnected web. Hindu adepts demonstrated capacities that appeared to contradict physical laws, but only if you assume the explicate domain constitutes all that exists. They weren't violating principles. They were operating from a more fundamental set of principles that most consciousness remains unaware of. So here's my inquiry for you. What if you could internalize those principles? What if you could access that identical consciousness technology? That's precisely what we're going to illuminate. But first, we need to establish the foundation. We need to comprehend what they meant when they described existence as projection. Let's immerse into the implicate domain. Here's what David Bohm discovered that destabilized physics foundations. He was examining electron dynamics in plasma, ionized gas, and he registered something that shouldn't manifest according to Newtonian mechanics. The electrons weren't functioning as discrete particles. They were coordinating like components of a larger integrated system, like they were unified by some invisible information matrix. Bohm designated this undivided wholeness in flowing movement. But here's where his brilliance manifests. Rather than simply cataloging the observation, he posed a more fundamental question. What if the separation we perceive is the distortion? What if reality's essential nature is unified, and the manifestation of discrete objects is derivative? This inquiry led him to formulate two orders of existence. The implicate order. Consider it analogous to an ocean. Everything within the ocean is composed of water. Waves ascend and descend, but they're not autonomous from the ocean. They're momentary expressions of it. The wave is ocean temporarily assuming a specific configuration, then dissolving back into wholeness. The explicate order. This is the dimension of waves. The dimension where phenomena appear discrete, differentiated, autonomous, where you appear positioned here and others appear positioned there, and boundaries seem absolute and temporality seems to progress unidirectionally. But here's the revelation. Bohm demonstrated mathematically that the explicate order is what he termed derivative reality. It emerges from something more fundamental. It's not the base layer. It's not the origin. The implicate order is. Now stay grounded, because this is where it intersects with ancient understanding in a way that transforms comprehension. Hindu metaphysics describes this exact identical architecture. They designate the implicate order as Brahman, the unchanging, eternal, unified consciousness field that underlies all manifestation. Everything that manifests is Brahman, temporarily expressing as something differentiated. and they designate the explicate order as Maya, which becomes mistranslated as illusion. But the authentic meaning carries more nuance. Maya is the veiling and projecting capacity of consciousness. It's not that the dimension doesn't exist. It's that the dimension of seemingly separate objects is an emanation from something more foundational and more essential. Consider this framework. Visualize a cinema screen. The imagery on the screen appears substantial. It moves. It interacts. It seems to possess independent existence. But you recognize those images are projections from an origin point, the film projector that exists on a completely different dimension of reality than the screen. You wouldn't declare the images are unreal, but you also wouldn't declare they're fundamentally real. They're contingent. They're derivative. They're secondary reality. That's Maya. That's the explicate order. And here's what this translates to for your practical experience. Most consciousness is operating entirely within the projected dimension. They're fixated exclusively on the screen, attempting to manipulate the screen's imagery to generate the outcomes they desire, pushing, forcing, striving, attempting to reorganize the explicate order from within the explicate order itself. But here's what the masters recognized. The authentic power isn't in manipulating the projection. It's in accessing the projector. When you operate from the implicate dimension, when you work with consciousness itself, rather than merely the object's consciousness is projecting, you're no longer attempting to force existence to transform. You're transforming the generative code that produces existence. This is why visualization functions when it authentically functions. This is why focused intention can shift probabilities. This is why consciousness appears to influence materiality in quantum observations. You're not contradicting physical principles. You're operating from a dimension where those principles emerge from something more primary, consciousness itself. But here's where most seekers encounter obstacles. They receive this information and they conclude, understood, so I simply need to visualize more intensely, generate more optimistic cognitions, affirm my objectives more forcefully. No, that's still operating from the explicate dimension. That's still attempting to utilize your conditioned surface consciousness to force transformation. What the ancients transmitted was far more refined and far more potent. Tibetan philosophy speaks of the void, the implicate order, as the origination point of all manifestation in boundless flux. They articulate that only the void is ultimately substantial. Formations in the explicate order are ephemeral. But here's the paradox that Western consciousness often bypasses. They simultaneously articulate that despite its ephemeral nature, the non-void still encompasses an infinitely vast multiplicity of dimensional expressions. It's not that the physical dimension is meaningless. It's that it's not ultimate. It's not foundational. And when you integrate this understanding, genuinely integrate it, not merely intellectually, but experientially, everything reconfigures because you recognize you're not a separated self attempting to acquire something from outside yourself. You are consciousness at the implicate dimension, projecting into the explicate. You're not attempting to obtain something. You're recognizing that you're the origin of everything. Shall we progress into the subsequent layer? Let me transmit something that required years for me to genuinely comprehend. When Hindu philosophy articulates the dimension as Maya, most Western consciousness registers the dimension is fabricated, like we're existing in a simulation and none of this carries significance. That's not what they're transmitting, not remotely. Here's the authentic teaching. and it's far more sophisticated and far more applicable. Maya operates through two mechanisms: veiling and projecting. Let me deconstruct this because it's essential. The veiling capacity means that consciousness, which is intrinsically unified, appears to become fragmented. The infinite appears constrained. The eternal appears temporary. The singular appears as multiplicity. But here's the recognition. This veiling isn't malevolent. It's not retribution. It's more analogous to consciousness engaging in concealment with itself. The universe exploring what manifestation feels like to forget its unity and embody separation. The projecting capacity is what generates the entire manifest dimension. Every particle, every celestial body, every cognition, every sensation, all of it is consciousness projecting itself into configurations. And here's what remains unacknowledged. You are simultaneously the consciousness generating the projection and the projection itself. Reflect on your dream states for a moment. When you dream, you generate an entire dimension. You populate it with entities, locations, narratives. Those dream entities seem autonomous. They seem to possess independent volition. But you recognize upon awakening that all of it was your consciousness projecting itself into transient configurations. The ancient masters are articulating waking experience is identical, simply a more stabilized, more persistent, more collectively coordinated dream. But here's where it becomes actionable. Most consciousness is identified entirely with the projection. They assume they are the character in the dream. They've completely forgotten they're the dreamer. And when you're identified with the projection, you're constrained by all the limitations of Maya. You believe you're separate. You believe you're powerless. You believe existence is something occurring to you. This is what's designated the conditioned consciousness. The Tibetan master Milarepa articulated it precisely. He stated, "The unconscious consciousness is far too conditioned in its perceptions to recognize the threshold between mind and matter. It can't perceive the frequency domain where mind and matter are unified." Zen philosophy possesses another formulation for this. They discuss confusing reality's indivisible nature with the conceptual compartments of language. We utilize words to fragment reality into categories: self versus other, internal versus external, mind versus matter, desirable versus undesirable. But reality itself doesn't contain those fragmentations. Those are imposed overlays. Those are Maya's veiling mechanism, generating the appearance of separation where none exists. And here's what this translates to for your present experience. That sensation of being constrained, of attempting to manifest something, but it continuously fails to materialize, of experiencing existence as resistant to your intentions. It's not that you're inadequate at manifestation. It's not that the universe opposes you. It's not that you're somehow afflicted or undeserving. It's that you're attempting to manifest from within the veil. You're utilizing the conditioned conceptual consciousness, the consciousness that believes in separation, to attempt to generate unity, connection, coherence. It's analogous to attempting to utilize a distorted measuring instrument to measure something accurately. The instrument itself is warped by the veil of Maya. So what's the resolution? The ancient lineages all indicate the identical practice, though they utilize different nomenclature. Hindus designate it seeing through Maya. Buddhists designate it perfect seeing and contemplation. Indigenous wisdom keepers designate it remembering the dream time, but they're all describing the identical transition. relocating your identity from the projection back to the projector, from the wave back to the ocean, from the character in the dream back to the dreamer. And here's what's revolutionary about this recognition. You don't need to travel anywhere. You don't need to become something you're currently not. You don't need to acquire some specialized capacity or knowledge from external sources. Because here's the truth that's concealed in plain awareness. You are already the projector. You are already consciousness at the implicate dimension. You're already the ocean pretending to be a wave. The work isn't to become awakened. The work is to remember what you've perpetually been. Now, you might be contemplating, understood, but how? How do I actually accomplish this? How do I see through the veil? And that's precisely what we're going to explore subsequently. But first, we need to integrate another element of the framework that makes this all crystallize. We need to discuss interconnection, about what indigenous wisdom keepers designate the web and what quantum physics designates non-locality. Because here's what transforms everything. You're not merely consciousness projecting a dimension. Your consciousness interconnected to all other consciousness in a web so intimate that the fragment literally is the totality. Let me demonstrate what I mean. Here's where existence becomes beautifully, impossibly extraordinary. There's a teaching in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology designated Indra's net. Visualize an infinite web extending in all directions. At every intersection of this web, there's a multifaceted jewel, and each jewel reflects all the other jewels in the net. So if you observe into any singular jewel, you perceive the reflection of every other jewel. And in each of those reflections, you perceive the reflection of all the other jewels infinitely, perpetually. Each fragment contains the totality. Each point reflects all other points. Now here's what remains unspoken. This isn't metaphorical language. This isn't mystical symbolism. This is a precise articulation of reality's holographic architecture. Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford, made a remarkable discovery investigating memory and neural function. He discovered that memories aren't stored in discrete locations in neural tissue. They're distributed throughout neural tissue holographically. You can remove substantial portions of neural tissue, and memories don't vanish. They simply become less precise, less detailed, because each portion of neural tissue contains information about the totality, just like each jewel in Indra's net. David Bohm extended this further. He proposed that the entire universe operates holographically. Every region of space contains information about the entire universe. The fragment is literally the totality folded into a more compact space. And here's something profound that often gets overlooked. When Bohm was developing his holographic theory, he wasn't just theorizing abstractly. He was observing plasma behaviors that defied conventional understanding. The electrons in plasma would organize themselves into coherent patterns that seemed to possess their own intelligence, their own knowing. They would avoid obstacles collectively, move as unified fields. It was as if they were all accessing the same information simultaneously, not through signals traveling between them, but through direct access to a shared implicate field. This is the same phenomenon that birds demonstrate in murmurations, those massive flocks that turn and dive in perfect synchronization without collision. The same phenomenon that schools of fish exhibit, moving as one organism. They're not following a leader. They're not calculating trajectories. They're accessing the implicate field, where all positions, all movements, all trajectories exist simultaneously as unified information. And indigenous wisdom keepers, without any knowledge of neuroscience or quantum theory, recognized this millennia ago. Black Elk, the Lakota holy person, had a vision. In this vision, he was transported to Harney Peak in the Black Hills, and he was informed that this peak was the center of existence. But here's what he articulated later. But anywhere is the center of existence. Anywhere is the center. Let that integrate for a moment. The ancient Greek philosopher Empedocles articulated the identical thing. God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. The Hermetic lineage taught as above, so below. The macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. What's accurate at the largest scale is accurate at the smallest scale. The Hindu Vishvasara Tantra articulates it even more directly. What is here is elsewhere. What is not here is nowhere. Different cultures, different epochs, identical recognition. And here's what this translates to for you. Practically, powerfully, immediately, you are not a minuscule, separated fragment of consciousness, disconnected from the totality, attempting desperately to manipulate an existence that's external to you. You are the center of the web. From your perspective, from your point of consciousness, the entire universe unfolds. Every thread in the web connects to you, touches you, interpenetrates you. This is why indigenous healers could perceive themselves at the center of the web, and from that position, influence healing across distance, affect atmospheric conditions, communicate with non-human consciousness. They weren't contradicting natural principles. They were operating from a more fundamental comprehension of natural principles. The principle of interconnection. The principle that articulates the fragment is the totality. This is why synchronicity manifests, why you contemplate someone and they make contact, why you require something and it appears, why your internal configuration shifts and suddenly external circumstances shift to correspond. Not because you're manifesting from separation, but because you are the web. When you shift, the entire web shifts because you're not separate from it. But here's where most consciousness encounters obstacles, and this is essential. They receive this teaching, and their conditioned consciousness attempts to possess it, to own it, to utilize it for individualistic gain. Excellent. So I'm the center of the universe. That signifies I can acquire whatever I desire. No, that's still operating from separation. That's still the ego, the false sense of isolated self attempting to manipulate existence. Here's what the masters comprehended that transforms everything. When you genuinely perceive yourself at the center of the web, you simultaneously perceive that everyone else is at the center of the web. Every point is the center. Every consciousness is the totality. This isn't about ego inflation. It's about ego dissolution into the recognition of radical unity. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia teach that authentic consciousness doesn't reside in the physical body. It exists in what they designate the dream time, the transcendent dimension that underlies and permeates the physical dimension. They articulate that underlying all visible configurations, there exists a vital essence from which they emerge, and that vital essence is shared universal singularity. When you interface with that vital essence, when you descend below the dimension of conceptual cognition, below the conditioned consciousness, into direct experience of the implicate order, something extraordinary manifests. You stop attempting to manifest from need, from scarcity, from the belief that you're separate from what you desire. Pause here for a moment. Have you ever experienced a glimpse of this, even briefly? A moment where the separation dissolved and something just appeared effortlessly? Drop a comment sharing that experience. Your story might be the catalyst someone else needs to recognize their own capacity. Instead, You recognize that you and the thing you desire are both waves in the identical ocean, both projections from the identical source. And in that recognition, the separation dissolves. The resistance dissolves. The manifestation occurs not because you forced it, but because you remembered the unity that was perpetually present. And here's something else that becomes clear when you operate from this recognition. The universe isn't responding to your desires. The universe is your desire expressing itself. There's no gap between the wanter and the wanted. There's no distance between the seeker and the sought. The search itself is the finding disguised as separation. This is why trying harder never works. This is why forcing outcomes creates more resistance. Because trying implies separation. Forcing implies you're here and the outcome is there. But when you recognize you're the projector, you understand that the outcome is already within you, already part of the unified field, already present in the implicate dimension, waiting to unfold into the explicate. And if what we're exploring here is landing in you as recognition, rather than just information, if you're sensing there's something deeper calling to be understood, I've compiled the complete framework in Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. We're touching the surface of how to shift from image to projector today, but the book walks you through the 9 master frequencies that transform you from unconscious broadcaster, trapped in survival static, to conscious field generator operating from the implicate order itself. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Are you beginning to perceive how radically different this is from conventional manifestation methodology? Let's descend even deeper. Now we arrive at the element that illuminates why you've been constrained. Why, despite knowing all this spiritual wisdom, despite comprehending the concepts, existence still feels like it's resisting you. Here's the uncomfortable recognition. Your conscious consciousness, the aspect of you that's receiving this right now, that assumes it's in control, that establishes intentions and creates vision boards. It's not the aspect generating your existence. The unconscious consciousness is the conditioned patterns buried so profoundly you don't even perceive them operating. The beliefs you absorbed before language acquisition, the traumas encoded in your nervous system, the cultural programming executing automatically. Milarepa, the great Tibetan master, articulated it directly. The unconscious consciousness is far too conditioned in its perceptions to recognize the threshold between mind and matter. Let me illuminate what he meant and why it's significant. Existence at the implicate dimension, at the quantum dimension, at the frequency domain doesn't possess a rigid threshold between mind and matter. They're interpenetrating. They're aspects of the identical unified field. But your conditioned unconscious consciousness doesn't perceive this. It perceives separation everywhere. It perceives you as here and existence as there. It perceives mind as internal and matter as external. And here's the revelation. It's generating existence from that perception of separation. Consider this framework. You consciously affirm, I am abundant. Resources flow to me effortlessly. But buried in your unconscious is a belief from childhood. Resources are scarce. People who possess resources are corrupt. I don't deserve prosperity. Estimate which one is actually generating your financial dimension. The unconscious every time. Because the unconscious is operating at the implicate dimension, at the dimension where the projection is being generated. The conscious consciousness is operating at the explicate dimension, at the dimension of the already projected existence. You're attempting to rearrange furnishings in a room while the unconscious is drafting the blueprint for the entire structure. This is why conventional manifestation methodologies fail for most consciousness. They're attempting to override profound unconscious conditioning with surface dimension conscious intention. It's analogous to attempting to navigate a vessel by repainting the exterior. And here's what makes this even more complex. The unconscious doesn't just hold individual conditioning, it holds collective conditioning, ancestral patterns, cultural beliefs that have been transmitted through generations, archetypal structures that Jung identified as existing in what he called the collective unconscious. Your personal unconscious is interconnected with humanity's collective unconscious. So when you're attempting to manifest abundance, you're not just working with your personal beliefs about money. You're interfacing with thousands of years of collective beliefs about scarcity, survival, worthiness, power, and resource distribution. This is why some manifestations feel easy and others feel impossible. The easy ones align with both your personal conditioning and collective conditioning. The impossible ones contradict deep ancestral and collective patterns. But here's the remarkable part. Because you're the center of the web, because the fragment contains the totality, when you shift your personal unconscious patterns, you're simultaneously shifting the collective field. Your individual transformation ripples through the entire web of consciousness. Zen philosophy comprehended this. They discuss the danger of confusing reality's indivisible nature with what they designate conceptual compartments. What are conceptual compartments? Language categories. The words we utilize to fragment reality. When you categorize something as desirable or undesirable, you're generating fragmentation where reality itself possesses none. When you articulate, "I desire this," you're generating separation between you and the thing you desire. The very act of desiring reinforces the belief in scarcity. The very act of attempting reinforces the belief in effort being necessary, and the unconscious absorbs all of this, generates from it, manifests from it. So you conclude in this exhausting loop, desiring, attempting, failing, desiring more intensely, attempting more intensely, failing more intensely, all while the unconscious is faithfully generating an existence that corresponds to its conditioning. Now here's what remains unacknowledged, and this is where it becomes both uncomfortable and liberating. It's not your responsibility. You didn't consciously select most of your conditioning. You absorbed it from parental figures, from culture, from trauma, from humanity's collective unconscious. The Lakota medicine person, Lame Deer, articulated it beautifully and tragically. He stated that contemporary human beings have forgotten the secret knowledge of their physical bodies, their sensory apparatus, their dream states. They don't utilize their neural capacity, and they have forgotten the secret knowledge the Spirit has embedded into every one of them. They are not aware of this, and so they stumble along blindly on the road to nowhere. A paved highway which they themselves bulldoze and make smooth so that they can arrive faster to the vast empty void which they'll discover at the end, waiting to consume them. That's the conditioned consciousness bulldozing a highway to nowhere, convinced it's generating progress. But here's the radical transition that transforms everything. The moment you perceive the conditioning, it begins to forfeit its power. The moment you recognize the unconscious patterns executing the generation, they begin to dissolve. This is what the Hindus designate seeing through Maya. This is what Buddhists designate perfect seeing and contemplation. It's not about acquiring new knowledge. It's about perceiving directly without the filter of concepts, without the veil of language into the nature of your own consciousness. And when you perceive it, when you genuinely perceive how the conditioned unconscious has been generating your existence, something remarkable manifests. You stop struggling with existence. You stop attempting to force transformation. You stop knuckling your way through manifestation methodologies. What's one unconscious pattern you're becoming aware of right now? Comment below. Sometimes naming the pattern is the first step to dissolving it. Instead, you begin healing, deconditioning, returning to the natural state of consciousness that existed before all the programming. The Aboriginal peoples designate this returning to the dream time. The Hindus designate it recognizing Brahman. The Buddhists designate it awakening to your Buddha nature. But they're all describing the identical thing: remembering what you were before you forgot, returning to the origin, coming home to the implicate order. And from that position, everything shifts. Not because you're forcing it, but because the generative code producing your existence has transformed. So here's my inquiry for you, and I desire you to genuinely integrate this. What patterns are executing in your unconscious right now? What beliefs about yourself, about existence, about what's possible? What beliefs are so profound you don't even perceive them as beliefs anymore? You simply perceive them as the way things are. Because those beliefs, those are the projector generating your hologram. And if you desire to transform the hologram, you need to transform the projector. Let's discuss how. Understood, let's integrate this all together. Because if you've remained present this far, you're prepared for the complete framework. Here's what we recognize now. Existence possesses two orders. The implicate, the unified field of consciousness from which everything emerges. The explicate, the projected dimension of separate configurations. You are not a separate self existing in the explicate order, attempting to manifest things from outside yourself. You are consciousness at the implicate dimension, projecting into the explicate. The ocean pretending to be a wave, the dimension of configurations. Everything you perceive, contact, experience is Maya, not fabricated, not meaningless, but not ultimate, not foundational. It's the hologram, not the origin. And this hologram operates on the principle of radical interconnection. You are the center of the web, but so is everyone else. Every point contains the totality. The fragment is the totality. This is why transforming your consciousness transforms your existence. Not through some mystical thinking, but because consciousness is existence's origin. When you shift the implicate, the explicate shifts to correspond. But and this is the essential element. Most of your manifestation isn't occurring from your conscious consciousness. It's occurring from your unconscious, from patterns so profound and so automatic that you don't even perceive them executing. You're analogous to someone attempting to operate a vehicle while someone else possesses control of the navigation. The conscious consciousness assumes it's in authority. The unconscious consciousness is actually generating the existence. So here's the ultimate inquiry, the one all the wisdom lineages indicate. How do you access the implicate dimension directly? How do you transition from being trapped in unconscious conditioning to being a conscious generator? The answer is more simple than you assume and more profound. You stop attempting. I recognize that sounds paradoxical, but remain present. Every effort, every striving, every attempt to force existence to be different than it is, all of that is emerging from the conditioned consciousness. The consciousness that believes in separation, the consciousness that assumes you're here and what you desire is there. The Tao Te Ching articulates it precisely. The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing incomplete. This isn't passivity. This isn't surrender. This is relinquishing the illusion of the separate self, attempting to control existence, and instead aligning with the flow of the implicate order itself. The indigenous healers comprehended this. They didn't attempt to force healing. They aligned with the web of connection and allowed the healing to flow through them. The masters comprehended this. They didn't strain to achieve awakening. They relaxed into the recognition of what was perpetually already accurate. The mystics of every lineage comprehended this. They designated it surrender, alignment, flow, wu-wei, releasing, and allowing the divine. But here's what they all recognized that transforms everything. This isn't about becoming passive. It's about becoming responsive instead of reactive, moving from the center instead of from fear, generating from wholeness instead of from scarcity. And when you accomplish this, when you genuinely accomplish this, the manifestation isn't something you force. It's something that unfolds naturally, elegantly, precisely, because you're not attempting to manipulate the hologram anymore. You're remembering that you are the hologram. You're remembering that you're the dreamer, not simply the dream. And from that position, everything becomes possible. But here's what needs to be said about this transition. It's not instantaneous for most people. It's not a single moment of awakening where suddenly everything clicks and you're permanently established in the recognition of yourself as the projector. For most consciousness, it's a gradual unfolding, a series of recognitions, moments where the veil thins and you catch a glimpse of the truth, followed by moments where the veil descends again and you forget. This is natural. This is part of the process. The conditioned consciousness has tremendous momentum. It's been operating for decades, maybe lifetimes. It doesn't dissolve overnight. What matters is that each time you catch a glimpse, each time you remember, even for a moment, that you're the projector and not the image, that recognition deepens. It creates a groove in consciousness. It makes the next remembering easier, more accessible, more stable. Think of it like learning to lucid dream. The first time you recognize you're dreaming while in a dream, it's startling. The recognition often wakes you up. But with practice, you can maintain the recognition for longer periods. You can navigate the dream consciously while remaining aware that you're dreaming. Eventually, that awareness becomes natural, effortless, continuous. The same process occurs with waking consciousness. The first recognition that you're the projector might be brief, unstable. You might slip back into identification with the projection quickly. But each recognition strengthens the capacity. Each remembering makes the forgetting less complete. Until eventually, you're established in the recognition more often than you're lost in the forgetting. Are you prepared for the final element? So let me transmit to you what you are. Genuinely transmit to you not as a concept, as an actuality. You are not a biological accident stumbling through a meaningless universe hoping to get fortunate, praying that perhaps if you attempt hard enough, think optimistic enough, visualize clearly enough, you might acquire a few fragments of the existence you desire. That narrative, that's the veil. That's Maya's ultimate deception, making consciousness forget itself and believe it's a separate, powerless fragment. Here's what you actually are. You are consciousness itself having a temporary human experience. You are the implicate order projecting into the explicate. You are the ocean engaging in being a wave. You are the dreamer dreaming the dream. And from your point of awareness, from your center of consciousness, the entire universe unfolds. Not because you're exceptional, but because every point is the center. Every consciousness is the totality. The ancient wisdom lineages recognized this. Quantum physics is validating this. And somewhere deep inside you, beneath the conditioning, beneath the concepts, beneath the fear, you've perpetually recognized this too. That sensation, you've possessed your entire existence. That sense that there's something more foundational, something you've forgotten. That's not a longing for something you need to acquire. That's the memory of what you've perpetually been calling you home. So here's my invitation to you. Not a command, not an obligation, an invitation. Stop struggling with existence. Stop attempting to force the hologram to be different from the dimension of the hologram. Instead, descend deeper beneath the cognitions, beneath the conditioning, beneath the conceptual consciousness that fragments reality into pieces. Descend to the implicate order, to the dream time, to the origin, to the vital essence from which all configurations emerge. And from there, from that position of unity and wholeness and infinite potential, allow your existence to unfold, not because you forced it, but because you remembered who you are. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe recognizing itself through the unique perspective of your consciousness, and that transforms everything. Now here's where it becomes even more extraordinary. Because everything we've explored today, the implicate order, the projection, the web of connection, there's a direct experiential practice that was refined over millennia. A practice so elegant, so immediate that when you engage it, you'll comprehend why contemporary physicists are only now approximating what the ancients already embodied. And I want to invite you into that direct experience, not as theory, but as lived recognition. If this transmission is touching something in you, something that feels like remembering rather than learning, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this space of consciousness exploration. Because the more of us who embody this recognition, the more existence reflects that actuality. Take a moment right now and comment below with this phrase, "I am the projector." Not as affirmation, as energetic declaration, as conscious interruption in the loop, as signal to the quantum field that you're choosing to remember. If something in this resonated, if you experienced a spark of recognition, drop one word in the comments that captures the transformation you're choosing right now. I read every single one. Subscribe not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent, to stay aligned with this frequency of awakening. Because here's what's true. Every time someone shifts from identification with the projection to recognition as the projector, it doesn't just change their individual experience, it shifts the entire field. Remember, you're not separate from the web. You are the web. Your transformation is the web's transformation. This is why the ancient masters spoke of collective awakening. They understood that individual enlightenment ripples through the entire consciousness field. When you remember yourself as the projector, you make it easier for others to remember. You become a node of coherence in the web, a point of clarity that others can attune to. And this is happening right now. More consciousness is waking up to this recognition than ever before in recorded history. Not because the teaching is new, but because the collective field is reaching a threshold, a tipping point, where enough nodes of consciousness have remembered their nature as projectors that the remembering begins to cascade through the entire web exponentially. You're part of that cascade. Whether you recognize it consciously or not, the fact that you're here, that you've stayed present through this entire transmission, that something in you resonated with these words. That's not random. That's the web recognizing itself through you. That's consciousness calling itself home through your unique perspective. And here's what makes this moment in human evolution so extraordinary. For the first time in history, we have both the ancient wisdom and the modern, scientific validation converging simultaneously. We have quantum physics corroborating what mystics have taught for millennia. We have neuroscience revealing the holographic nature of consciousness that shamans accessed through direct experience. This convergence isn't coincidence. It's consciousness reaching a level of complexity where it can finally understand itself from both the inner and outer perspectives simultaneously. Where the subjective and objective, the mystical and scientific, the ancient and modern all point to the same fundamental truth. You are the projector, not metaphorically, actually. And every moment you forget that truth, you experience suffering, limitation, separation. Every moment you remember it, you experience freedom, possibility, unity. The choice isn't whether to become the projector. You already are. The choice is whether to remember or to keep forgetting, whether to align with the truth of what you are, or to continue believing the illusion of what you're not. And that choice happens in each moment, not once, continuously. Every instant is an opportunity to remember. Every breath is an invitation to align with the implicate order. Every perception is a chance to recognize yourself as the source rather than the recipient of experience. This is the practice. Not some complex technique, not some rigorous discipline, simply the ongoing choice to remember, to question the assumption of separation, to feel into the spaciousness that exists before thought divides reality into subject and object, to rest in the recognition that the seer, the seeing, and the seen are all movements of the same unified consciousness. Start with this. Throughout your day, whenever you catch yourself believing you're the image trapped in the hologram, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what if I'm the projector? What if this entire experience is arising from consciousness rather than happening to consciousness? Don't try to force an answer. Don't strain to manufacture an experience. Simply hold the question lightly and notice what shifts. Notice if there's a subtle relaxation, a softening of the boundaries you normally feel between self and world. A recognition that the distinction between inner and outer is more fluid than you assumed. That's it. That's the practice in its essence. Simply remembering to question the projection. Simply pausing long enough to recognize the projector. And over time, with patience and persistence, that recognition stabilizes. The moments of remembering become longer. The periods of forgetting become shorter, until eventually, you're established in the knowing more than you're lost in the illusion. This isn't about perfection. You'll still forget. You'll still get caught in the projection. That's natural. That's part of being human. But each time you remember, you're strengthening the capacity to remember. You're creating pathways in consciousness that make the recognition more accessible. And here's something beautiful. As you practice this remembering, as you establish yourself more firmly in the recognition of yourself as projector, your life begins to transform naturally. Not because you're forcing change, not because you're manipulating circumstances, but because the source code generating your experience is shifting. Patterns that felt fixed become fluid. Limitations that felt absolute become negotiable. circumstances that felt immovable begin to shift. Not through effort, but through alignment, through coherence with the implicate order. Consider returning to this transmission daily, perhaps each morning before the day begins. Each viewing deepens the recognition, stabilizes the remembering. And if someone in your life is ready to understand this truth, share this video with them. That act of sharing isn't just information transfer. It's an energetic ripple in the web of consciousness. When you articulate these principles to another, you simultaneously reinforce your own embodiment of them. You become a node of coherence that helps the collective field remember what it's always been. This is what the masters meant by effortless action, by flow, by being in the Tao. They weren't talking about passivity or laziness. They were talking about alignment with the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. When you're aligned with the source, when you're operating as the projector rather than identified as the image, transformation becomes natural, effortless, inevitable. Until then, remember, anywhere is the center of existence, including precisely where you are right now. See you in the next transmission. Now, if you're recognizing yourself as the projector, the next essential understanding is how to communicate with reality itself. Because when you speak to yourself correctly, when you align your internal dialogue with your nature as the source rather than the recipient, reality reorganizes instantly to match that frequency. The video, Speak to Yourself Correctly, Your Reality Shifts Instantly, reveals the precise language patterns that collapse the quantum field into the outcomes you're choosing. Watch it next.